Hi, grade 7s. Today we're going to be talking about alliteration and assonance. So to start off, we're going to be doing a very quick poem. So we're going to read the poem together, and as we read it, I would like you to listen to the sounds in the poem. See if you can kind of see if there's any sounds that are being repeated. So this is called Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout. Sarah Cynthia Sylvia Stout would not take the garbage out. She'd scour the pots and scrape the pans, candy the yams and spice the hams. And though her dad would scream and shout, she simply would not take the garbage out. So after looking at the poem and listening to the poem, what letter sound do you hear a lot of? So if you said S, you are correct. So we see a lot of S's and hear that S sound a lot throughout this poem. And that is what we would know as alliteration. That also comes from this book called Where the Sidewalk Ends by Shel Silverstein. Here's another example. Peter Piper picked peppers, but Run rocked rhymes. That's by Run DMC. So, what is this poetic device called? And if you guessed alliteration, you were right. That's because in the line Peter Piper picked peppers, all of those words start with P, and in the second line, but Run rocked rhymes, 3 out of those 4 words start with the letter R. So for example, another sentence, can cool Kevin care for cuddly kittens? That's the C sound, or the K sound. So even though we don't necessarily see all the letters starting with C in there, when I read those words, they all make the K sound. Can cool Kevin care for cuddly kittens? Except for the word for. So everything has that K sound. So that's also an example of alliteration. Even though C and K both make that sound, it's not C's or K's repeated, but the combination of them both works here because they both make the same sound. So this is when, alliteration is when consonant sounds are repeated. So those last few slides are just some examples of alliteration and what it might look like in poetry or in any type of writing. Example, Paul played ping pong poorly. All the words there start with the letter P or contain the word P at the beginning. Now, in this sentence, we're seeing something a little bit different. I'm going to read it for you. Bob's hog rocked on the log. In most of those words, except for the, we're hearing an ah, that O sound. That's an example of assonance. An assonance is when a vowel sound is repeated. So the vowel sound doesn't necessarily have to be at the beginning of the word. Most times when we see assonance, the vowel sound is being repeated. The vowel sound being repeated is in the middle of those words. For example, here, Lee speaks freely. So in all of those words, we're hearing an E sound. And there's just a picture where you can see some examples of assonance. So if you look at it carefully, see if you can find the assonance in what the dog is saying in each of those speech bubbles. Alone, alone, all alone, on my own, without a bone, moan. So what you're going to be doing today using this information, the PowerPoint really is just a review because you should have seen, maybe not assonance, but definitely alliteration. You would have worked with that in previous grades before. So the sheets that I'm assigning for you on the slides deal with both alliteration and assonance, and I'm going to go over those with you really quick so that you know what to do. So the first sheet is called Alliteration and Alliterative Day, and there are 3 parts to this sheet. The first part just says identify the alliteration in the following sentences. So like last time when I told you that you could make shapes around words that worked for this, you can do the same this time. So in sentence number 1, it says jumping Jennifer jammed Johnny's jaw full of jelly beans. So as you notice, I've realized what the alliteration is in that sentence, so I've started to put some squares around those words. And you can just, again, as we've discussed, you go into shapes, create a shape, and then once it's created, just make sure that the color of the shape is transparent, meaning that we are able to see through it so we can see the word that you've created a shape around. So there's only 3 sentences that you need to do that for, so it shouldn't take too long. Number 2 is just finish the sentence using alliteration. So it gives you a sentence starter, and then all you're doing is you're just coming up with some other words that would work in that sentence. And it's the same as before. You just click in the box where it says type here, backspace what I've written, and create your own sentence. Part 3 is just some tongue twisters that you can try. As we talked about in previous slides when we discussed alliteration, I did say that a really good example of alliteration is tongue twisters, because that's what they basically are. So you can try some of those 3 times fast. On this page, all you're doing is you're reading the sentences, and you are going to try to determine whether the sentence is an example of alliteration or of assonance. So if you don't remember what they mean, the terms are up here at the top, and then all you have to type in the boxes is either the word alliteration or assonance, depending on what you see in that sentence. And at the bottom, you're going to write some silly sentences. Make sure that at least 2 of them have alliteration, or at least, try to make sure that they have at least 2 examples of alliteration and 2 examples of assonance. So you can either have 2 sentences where one of them is just alliteration and then the second one is assonance, or you can do 4 sentences, whatever you want to do. But you should have at least 2 sentences here, 1 representing alliteration and 1 representing an example of assonance. The last activity is basically you're just going to write a poem about a typical day in your life, and it's going to start from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep, and you're going to use alliteration as your main poetic device. So, for example, if I was talking maybe about myself, maybe I would start with something like, Miss Sampson slumbered soundly until the sound of her shrill alarm woke her up. So in that sentence, there are a lot of words that start with the letter S. So that would be an example of alliteration. Maybe that's how I would start my poem. You can start yours any way you'd like. The poem should be at least 5 lines minimum. So just keep that in mind as you're writing. Doesn't have to be super long, but at least 5 lines. So that's your assignment for today, using alliteration and assonance. If you have any questions, just message me in the classroom, or you can shoot me a Gmail, comment on the assignment, whatever is easier for you. And good luck, and we'll be chatting soon.